Well, we'll get the program started. I really don't need to call her up because she's already here, Miss Anna Albiar.
All right, what a big crowd. I want to say good morning, first of all, and I would like to thank Tim Roberts and the wonderful MLS and Business Tech Committee for inviting me this morning to speak about the new forms and the updates that are due to be released on June 24th. I feel very privileged to be a part of the California Association of Realtors Standard Forms Advisory Committee for the last couple years. I'm on a 3-year committee assignment. So I'll try my best to give you a brief summary of the more significant changes that are coming soon. So as we get started here, I do want to say that we did pass out copies of the quick summary guide, which has a list of all of the new and updated forms for your reference. If you didn't get one, don't fret, because here on my slide, I have information on where you can go, the links to grab that quick summary guide, maybe to pass out to your agents at your office, and where you can find that. The committee's focus, I will say, this year was to review every form in the library, just to give you some background, to make sure that every form is current, that the forms are consistent with each other as well. So that's why it seems like there's a whole lot on that form, but once you start perusing that, you'll see that most of them have very minor changes and are so notated on there. So that's why there's so many revisions, but if you look here, if I have gotten comments from members that say it's so hard to navigate the C.A.R.org website to find these things, right? So just a little note that when you go to C.A.R.org, they do have a little search bar that you can click right up at the right-hand corner, and that search bar has you just type in June 2025 release forms, or forms release, and you'll get let me see if I have, you'll get this right here, you'll go to that URL. The quick summary guide will be found there, but it also has its own URL, and I like going to that specific URL because you can actually find quick summary guides from way back, okay, that explain other forms that have come out in the past. So the forms are released twice a year. We get a release every June and every December. Sometimes forms may be released sporadically through the year, and that's going to be due to laws that come into effect during the year and not your normal December 1st, which we'll see here in a few slides. So there are 13 new forms. Sounds daunting, but it really isn't. There are a few, maybe I would say 3 or 4, that are going to be used most often. And if you're in property management, I don't know how many we have here that are doing property management, but if you're in property management, we do have this little group right here that are new due to the new law that just went into effect for rentals and move-ins and move-outs and deposits and whatnot in April. So that's one of the kind of laws and form dates that came a little bit early. So the first form that I want to go over, I hope you guys can hear me. The first form I want to go over is the addendum, and it's a generic addendum. So that's the kind of special quality about this addendum. A lot of the times we would have situations where you had to do an addendum, but between an agent and one of the parties, either the seller or the buyer. And we didn't really have a form for that because it either had, the addendums always had buyer and seller, right? So now this special addendum that's generic, this form can be used for agent-to-agent situations or agent-to-principal situations. So you could also use this between agents. The addendum signature block before, as I said, was only for buyer, seller, or tenant housing provider. This addendum should not be used, however, to modify an already existing RLA or BRBC. Use the modification of terms forms instead, and that states that right on that new addendum. Another new form is the amendment to prior disclosure. So we felt that this was needed to be used after the SPQ or TDS provided for any changes or discovery of new materials during the transaction. So pre-printed options for amending the SPQ or TDS are on there. Options to identify it for one unit or multiple units in the event that it's 1 to 4 or more. And then notice, there is a notice above the signature that states that the APD, this new form, may give buyer new right to rescind. Okay, so if you recall, if anything changes on one of those state required disclosures, and from the date of that new change, you're starting over your, period where the buyer has a right to review that and back out if they so choose to. The next form, the liquidated damages in arbitration additional signature addendum. That is a mouthful, right? So we have shortened it. The acronym is LDAA. So California law requires that liquidated damages and arbitration clauses be separately signed or initialed. Additional signers will use new form LDAA to do so. Paragraph 1 on the form states that all additional signers do not, if they do not all initial, or all the parties in the purchase contract don't initial, the applicable liquidated damages or arbitration will not be incorporated into the final agreement. So just a side note over here, this is the current form, so this isn't the new form, but as a side note, the liquidated damages you used to sign individually here, there was a spot, but we were getting feedback from members that it was confusing. They just wanted something a little bit different, so that's why we came up with its own form to opt into liquidated damages and the arbitration clause. The change on the ASA, the additional signature addendum, it was reformatted to be more easily identify the attached forms being agreed to by the additional signers. They added a reminder in the opening paragraph that more than one form can be attached. It attaches this LDAA purchase contracts only, and it avoids having to address those forms requiring initials if not applicable. It does have room for up to 4 additional signers. Okay, the next form, new construction advisory. So it says new, but it's really in name only, okay? It's the same form with the new name. It was previously known as the new construction property disclosure statement. But
Excuse me, Anna, let me interrupt you for a minute. Next door, if you're parked in the chiropractor's office, they're fixing to tow you out. So please, stop what you're doing, get out there and get to your car and move it over here or move it into the lot next door, because they are very strict on their parking, and they're serious about it. We've seen them tow cars. So thank you. Sorry about that.
no worries. We don't want to have somebody get towed and not find their car when we get out, right? This next new form, the Rental Property Owner Advisory, RPOA. This form informs a buyer or existing property owner considering renting out a property of factors that should be considered before reaching that decision. Applicable paragraphs address rent and eviction control, upkeep requirements, necessary disclosures, security deposit requirements, assistance animals, pets, fair housing, effects of emergency declarations, and maybe even more. The next one is the Seller in Possession Advisory, SIPA. When a buyer allows a seller to stay in possession after close of escrow, the legal relationships between the buyer and the seller can change. The SIPA informs both buyer and seller of important considerations that could impact them both. Applicable paragraphs include creating a tenancy, property maintenance, time of possession, verifying the property's condition, and insurance. So it's an advisory. The next one is the SVRA, Short-Term Vacation Rental Advisory. So this short-term vacation rental advisory, some buyers purchase property with the intent to rent out the property for limited periods of time, like VRBOs, right? Airbnbs. And this form advises purchasers that there are many laws and other considerations applicable to short-term rentals. The buyer is responsible for investigating local laws, homeowner association rules, tax payments, and fair housing laws, among other issues. So this is sorta a new one, but we've had this one actually around for a while. Again, we've kind of moved things around and named it to the Short Sale Listing Addendum, the SSLA. It's Modified Short Sale Information and Advisory. Who remembers that? That was actually one of the ones that we could attach to the to our forms. It's now the new SSLA for sellers only. So we felt like there was a lot of information on that SSIA that really just pertained to sellers, right? It didn't need to be on the buyer side. So we actually have the two paragraphs. There were a couple paragraphs from the SSIA. We moved those into a short sale addendum, added explanation of short sale and information that buyers should consider. So sort of a new form, but not really. So these are the new forms that were created a little bit early. This is for the new law for rentals, AB 2801, that went into, it was as of April 1st, 2025. Property managers, owners are legally required now to photograph the unit before tenancy begins, starting July 1st, 2025. After move out, but before cleaning repairs. After repairs are completed, photos must accompany the itemized statement if deposit deductions are made. This is now law, not just best practices. So make sure you read up on that. I will tell you there is a quick guide for that also that you can find in C.A.R.org, and I'll show that here in a little bit. So some of these new forms here include this SUM-ME, Move-In Inspection Summary. That's a new form that only identifies items in rental that need attention. It can be used in place of the entire MII if the box is checked in the MII. The SUM-MOI, Move-Out Inspection Summary, also a new form, only identifies items in the rental that need attention. It too can be used in place of the entire MOI, move-out inspection, if the box is checked in the MOI. The PMOI, pre-move-out inspection summary form, only identifies items in the rental that need attention, can be used in place of entire PMOI if box is checked. So this was the quick guide. again, there's many quick guides that you can find in our C.A.R.org website. This one here, oops, let me get back to it. What did I do? This here quick guide right in there explains the new law, that AB 2801. If you want to peruse that, you can find that on C.A.R.org. And the last new form, yes, you have a question? Yes, yes. I didn't put all of them in here, just the ones that I thought were going to be used the most. That's why I kind of passed out that quick summary guide, so you have a list of everything. But I believe these are most of them. The team member exit agreement. It's kind of like team, but spelt weird, right? So the form identifies three items: reason for termination, how compensation and expenses will be addressed after the termination, and need to inform new broker. Okay, so let's get back to some forms that we use all the time. And again, there are revisions and changes to, you have the list, a lot of different forms. I just am going to touch on the ones that are our everyday ones that we use, which are the BRBC, the RLA, and the RPA. No big changes, just a few small ones. Changes to the BRBC is they added language to remind brokers of listing compensation to amount specified in the agreement. The changes to the RPA, they removed the buyer affirmation in 3G3, okay? So I know there were a lot of questions in many different areas, not just here locally, but we were seeing our C.A.R. Forms Advisory Committee, actually at our last meetings, we always have a closed meeting with just the committee members, but before that, every time we have a meeting 3 times a year that is scheduled on location, we do have a forum on forms meeting where we talk about new forms, we talk about changes, we open it up to C.A.R. members' input, suggestions, right, questions, and we were getting a lot of the other side's asking me for my BRBC. We don't want to give it. Do we have to give it? So the stance and position from NAR is that we're not the police. We're not intended to be the police. The buyer representation and broker compensation is an agreement between the buyer and their broker agent. And so the reason that we removed or thought with the attorneys is there were already some instances coming down the pike where the sellers, because the affirmation was there before, the sellers were like, well, who's verifying, right? Who's verifying that that's what it says in that BRBC? And so then it was like implying, because the affirmation was there, it was implying that it was the seller's agent's duty to verify that, right? To verify that that was an accurate BRBC. So that's why they were asking for those copies. And some agents were keeping them, close to their hip on the buyer side. The other thing that we didn't, the attorneys, C.A.R. attorneys, big attorneys, were also mentioning is that if we get into the situation where everybody's asking for everybody's BRBC and you start kind of saving these BRBCs and you kind of have the ability to say, oh, this person always asks for this, or so that really isn't anyone's business. And they said that that could in itself lead to an antitrust situation where the other broker on the other side, on the seller side, could start kind of keeping tallies of, who's doing what on their BRBCs. So that was I just kind of wanted to give you the background on why the committee and the attorneys decided to remove that affirmation. So we also added language in 19D that escrow to follow 3G3 compensation instructions to offset any buyer payment by amount seller pays. Advised in 18A, the buyer agent should not receive more compensation than specified in the buyer rep agreement, which was also in the BRBC. Changes to the RLA, the residential listing agreement. There was an added reference to the new short sale listing addendum. That's kind of new. And they removed the reference to the short sale information advisory. So that was replaced with the new SSLA. Added a statement that seller's broker will not confirm compensation between buyer and buyer's broker. So that was put in there as well, so that it's clearly stated that it is not the seller's agent's duty to confirm or verify what the agreement is between the buyer and their broker. So, as I said in the beginning, Realtor members, when we open it up at our meetings 3 times a year, it's a winter meeting that's usually held sometime in February, a spring meeting that is held in Sacramento around end of April, early May, and then the fall meetings usually in September. If you go on to C.A.R..org, the meeting materials, you'll see that you'll look up the Standard Forms Advisory Committee, and they're going to try to do the forum on forms as a Zoom so that all of the members can sit in, register, and have a say, give their opinions, ask questions. So you can go if you don't want to wait for that and you have a burning question or a burning, like I need to change this form or add this language, or this would make my life better if it was in this form. Any suggestions that you have, please email them to carforms@car.org, and we actually go through every single comment that comes in. We spend hours on that as a committee. And just because you don't see whatever you sent in as a suggestion or a comment or a change happen, doesn't mean we didn't go over it, review it, discuss it, vote on it. It just means that we thought it didn't fit. Or maybe it was addressed somewhere else. So there is going to be a Legal Live webinar, which is taking place June 10th from 1:30 to 2:45 on the new and revised forms. You're going to get a more detailed explanation from our 2 amazing attorneys at California Association of Realtors, Neil Kalin and Justin. I know his last name, but I cannot pronounce it, so I'm not even going to try. Starts with an M, though. So if you go to car.org again, you can go in the search bar, because, again, it's not easy to find, and put in the search bar live webinars. And you'll come up with all of the live webinars that they have. This one is showing front and center at the head of all of the webinars that are there. Or this is the URL if you want to get straight to it to register. Okay? I've already registered, so I love hearing what our attorneys have to say. And I just want to say thank you. I'm so happy to see that Forms always packs the house. Of course, it's what we do every day, and it's important to us to know what's going on with the forms that we use on a daily basis. So thank you for being that professional agent and showing up.
So, do we have any questions for Anna now on what she covered? And please, give her a round of applause. That was great.
On the BRBC, I was requested to send that to escrow.
They can't hear it on the recording.
On the BRBC, escrow requests a copy. Then I get a request from seller's agent. Then I get a request from the lender for the buyer. We're supposed to supply that to all those individuals.
So I would say the ones that you should supply that to, and that's a personal choice. I'm not going to tell you don't send it to the seller. That's a personal choice. If you want to do it, do it. Again, we're not the police of the BRBCs and what's going on the buyer side with their agreements. We don't send them our listing agreements, right? As on the seller side, the buyer doesn't call us and say, send me your listing agreement, right? So it's the same thing, even though the answer to your question, the lender should have it if the buyer is paying any portion of that BRBC. The lender should have it. So some escrow officers will send it to the lender, but in my case, what I do personally, if I know that my compensation is only being covered from the seller partially, and then my buyer is paying the other portion, I send that off to the escrow and their lender, because again, the lender needs to see what's going to go on the charges on the buyer side.
Okay, so on a listing I have, got a buyer that wanted to see the property. We have the listing, but the buyer wanted to see it, not working with an agent. They called, and daughter's in the car, and tells me that they're going to use her realtor, but they want me to open up the house.
Is it your listing?
It's my listing.
Okay.
And I told her she ought to call her realtor to have them open up the house. Mm-hmm. She said, why can't you just open it for me? I just want to see it. How would you handle that? She asked me, she said, can't you just do it? I told her she'd have to sign that, BRBC.
So if it is your listing, and you want to show it because you're working on your seller's behalf to have somebody come in and look at the property, and it is your listing or a listing that your broker has. Doesn't have to be yours. It could be, your colleague's listing, any one of the agents under your brokerage. At that point, and say you get a floor call on it, and they want to see it, you want to get them inside to see it. They don't maybe want to sign a BRBC with you, but the open house non-agency, that's what you would use. And you can use that if it is one of your listings or one of your brokerage's listings. So that's all you need to have, is have them, just like you're doing an open house and you have to have those open house non-agency forms, the sign-in, open house sign-in forms, that explains to that buyer that whatever they say to you is not confidential, because you're working there on behalf of the seller. Your fiduciary duty is to the seller, and you basically can take them a flyer, and if they have any other questions, sure, I'll answer more questions that are not on that flyer, but then we have to have an agency, right? If I start implying agency by sharing other information with you. So that's how I would handle it. Anybody else?
But Anna, on the same token, if she's just representing the seller doing fiduciary duty, you need to verify that that buyer is in fact qualified, because now you've got the seller moving out, and kids and dogs and everything. I mean, that's something that she would need to verify before having the whole family get out, right?
Correct, and again, that's like, that's definitely a personal choice. And that's why we use that open house sign-in sheet. Because when we hold open houses and we have that sheet in front of us, we're really not taking pre-approval letters, we're not verifying anything, we're just saying, come look at this new listing we have, share it with your family and friends, right? And hoping that we get a qualified, approved buyer in the door.
How do you then know that person making the request, if the listing agent actually is represented by another agent?
You take their word for it. I mean, again, we're not the police of BRBCs, and if they have one or who they have it with, if they tell you that they have one, then, and you want to get them in to see your client's property to try to sell it, possibly to them, and maybe they'll run to back to their agent, whoever they have their agreement with, and say, I loved it, write it up, right? Back there, yes?
Thank you. Going back to the BRBC, could the issue regarding the contents of that document, when provided to the title company, be handled by requesting that that information remain confidential?
Absolutely.
So once you provide that information, if the title or escrow company requires it, especially if there's only one party paying the commission, if you provide that and you request that that information be kept confidential, then there really is no issue.
I agree.
Okay, so are the title companies and escrow companies aware of that provision?
The new provision that's in there, is that what you're asking?
Well, the provision that allows a broker or an agent to make that request to keep that information confidential.
I'm not sure what the title and escrow companies are aware of, actually.
They're a player in this game, right? So they should be participating in some way.
I would say if it's important to you, then you make sure you let that escrow officer know this is important to me. Do not tell the other side of the transaction this information.
Are you speaking on behalf of an escrow company?
No, I'm just
Oh,
saying, I
okay.
would suggest you tell them
No,
that.
no,
Right.
that's fine.
Yeah.
So I work with multiple escrow companies across the state, and it is not a legal requirement for them to verify a listing agreement, a buyer-broker agreement, or a purchase agreement. They are a neutral third party, and they take their instruction from the parties. So if you tell them, my agreement is 3%, they don't check. Nobody checks. So that's part of one of the factors in it, depending on who you deal with in the state. Locally, our companies check. Immediately upon opening escrow, you must provide them a copy of the listing agreement, a BRBC agreement, and any modifications to the listing or BRBC agreement so that it can be initially disclosed to the lenders upon their CDs. So when the lender asks for initial fees, they want to make sure that BRBC has already come to them and any modifications. But let me tell you, if you're working with Southern California or Northern California doesn't even do escrow instructions. The purchase agreement is your escrow instructions, so they don't verify any of it.
Wow.
So be proactive.
Right. And to
Thankfully,
that
our
note,
county is.
right. And to that note, Fabi, I cannot remember the last time I even sent a listing agreement to an escrow officer when requested. I just emailed back. This is what my side is getting. That's it. Nobody ever says, okay, but send me the agreement. Nobody's ever said that. Any other questions? See, so no big, huge things, right? It's like we let the December forms release is the one that, usually if there are big things coming, you'll see them in the December forms release. Again, a lot of it is tied to new laws that are coming. Most new laws go into effect January 1st. So that's why most of, if there's going to be big things, are in the December. Sure, absolutely. Okay. Again, I think we're, Jamie?
Yeah, we do have Jamie coming up. Thank you, Anna. Let's give Anna a really big round of applause for that. That was great.